now for the big political face-off is Congress MP Dr. Shashi Tharoor and National Vice President of the BJP, Panda. Dr. Tharoor, just like all other budgets, this time too, the opposition parties, including yours, have said that budget 2022-2023 don't have anything for farmers, salaried class, middle class, youth. The question is, why is it so predictable all the time?
Well, because unfortunately the government gives us an underwhelming budget all the time. I really thought that after the 2 years of pandemic, we might be really getting some remarkable new proposals from this government. But sadly, there was absolutely nothing to be cheered about. In fact, the omissions were quite astonishing. No reference to the impact of the pandemic on the very poor in our country. The entire unemployment crisis, last year we had the worst unemployment figures ever recorded in history. There was nothing about that to address that other than a derisory 60 lakh jobs in the next 5 years at a time when 53 million people in our country are unemployed. So you're offering a question of 6 million jobs against 53 million unemployed, and you're doing it over 5 years. That's their answer to an unemployment. Not a word about job creation in any meaningful sense. Nothing about reviving the MSMEs that had shut down. We had absolutely no good news on the inflation front. The middle class was hoping for some sort of tax break. Nothing came their way. The corporates got something. Absolutely no good news for anyone on our side to be cheered about.
Okay.
And if it was a question of cutting indirect taxes like GST to control inflation, even that would have been better, because at the moment, Mehengai Mar Gayi is the theme of every song in the ordinary public's lips, and nothing is happening in that front either. So that what you're seeing is a situation in which Manrega has had its allocations actually reduced, even though Manrega was in greater demand in the last 2 years of the pandemic than ever before.
That is Dr. Tharoor completely summarizing the questions that the opposition has been raising. Mr. Panda, you haven't really shown any roadmap for job creation. Inflation, unemployment are impacting the youth of India, the common man, the middle class households. How does the government plan to arrest rising prices?
Maria, I can understand Shashi Tharoor's compulsions to spin the budget on a completely non-factual basis, but for you to chime in on the same and assert that this doesn't show a roadmap is disappointing. But let me point out, Shashi was clearly, he may have been physically in the Lok Sabha, but his mind was probably 1,000 miles away, because the entire budget reference started with the challenges of the pandemic and how 800 million people have been helped with the special arrangements made during the last 2 years for rations, for direct benefit transfer, and many other such things. Now, if you look at job creation, the 60 lakhs jobs to be created through the productivity-linked incentive scheme is just one scheme. And so it's apples to oranges to compare that with the need of the country. But 60 lakhs jobs is nothing to sneer at. And let me tell you what is in the budget in answer to your question. Now, if you think that 60,000 crores to take piped water to another 38 million homes, if you think 48,000 crores to build another 8 million homes for the underprivileged doesn't count for anything. If you think that 2.37 lakh crores for MSP to assist 16 million farmers, 45,000 crores for the Ken Betwa project, which will create irrigation for 9 lakh hectares, help millions of farmers. If you think the massive thrust on infrastructure, 35% increase on the central government's direct funding for infrastructure, going up to 7.5 lakh crores. And in addition, the other funding that the central government gives grants to the state governments to build nearly 11 lakh crores worth of infrastructure. Where do you think this is all going to go? This is going to help create jobs. Infrastructure can't be built without employing people.
Okay, then
infrastructure is going to lead to downstream
Dr.
investment.
Tharoor, did the opposition react without going through the fine prints of it?
Easier.
Because there are some numbers that has been, provided by Panda here.
200 new channels for education is going to transform education in the nation. To Shashi has been on the record criticizing in this exact same manner for the last so many years, and he's been proven wrong because we are the fastest growing large economy yet again, once more, and that hasn't happened on autopilot. The more than 1.7 billion people that got vaccinated. Is it didn't happen on autopilot. It happened with the leadership of the Prime Minister and enormous efforts by the government. So to downplay all of that, I heard Shashi talk about nothing there for defense. I mean, clearly he wasn't listening to the massive shift of gears. 68% of defense procurement will now happen domestically. Can you imagine what that will do to jobs and investment and employment? 25% of defense budget for R&D to develop indigenous capability. Now, to think that this is not going to help in creating jobs or to help the middle class, it's just bizarre.
Dr. Tharoor, here is Jai Panda talking about what this budget has for the farmers, for the Aam Aadmi. Then why is the former finance minister, Dr. P. Chidambaram, calling this budget the most capitalist speech ever read by the finance minister?
Because we honestly don't see much for the Aam Aadmi. Remember that we're talking, Jay's talking about the economy growing. The fact is, for 2 years, the economy plunged. The rate of growth absolutely plunged. And in terms of real human beings and their real experiences, 60 lakh MSMEs closing down across the country because of demonetization and its aftermath, and then the pandemic. During the pandemic, so many jobs have been lost. So many people are unemployed. See, you can't talk of the economy in terms of the big numbers that Jay has been spouting without looking at the way in which ordinary human beings are experiencing their life in the economy. Household income has gone down colossally. We are a country in which normally household savings are very high. It's gone down dramatically during the tenure of this government, and particularly since demonetization. Some 46 million people have been pushed into extreme poverty. We're looking at household and consumption, personal private consumption as a percentage of GDP, it's plunged by 3% in the last 2 years. So every area, and on top of that, the pandemic has of course taken a toll. There's been a huge learning loss among school children. Malnutrition, stunting and wasting has increased. We've plunged to 101st in the global hunger index out of 116 countries. Our unemployment rates are through the roof, the highest ever recorded last year. And of course, inflation has been hitting the the Aam Aadmi, the common man, at a time when very often he's unemployed or his income has been cut, he has much less disposable income, and he's having to pay more for everything. The price of an LPG cylinder has gone up in 1 year. From October 2020, when the LPG cylinder in Delhi cost 504 rupees, to October 2021, when it cost 899, namely 900 rupees. 500 to 900 in 1 year, at a time when this person either doesn't have a job, has lost his job, or is struggling to make ends meet. How can we speak about anything for the Aam Aadmi or the poor in these circumstances? We are looking at a country, when that too, where was the tax relief to the taxpayer?
Jai Panda, one point that is being made is that there is a visible disconnect.
One last thing, Maria.
Yes.
Since Jay made such a big deal about the capex increase, 35% increase announced by the finance minister, let me say I actually have applauded that if it's actually done. Because if you look at the government's figures on capital expenditure, they've consistently failed to meet their targets. And if you just take the last 3 quarters, the quarter ending June, quarter ending September, quarter ending December, each quarter capital expenditure fell. It was not only low, but it fell from a low bar further in each of these quarters. So I'll believe it when I see it.
Jai Panda, before you respond to all the charge that is coming from Dr. Shashi Tharoor's side, I have a question as well here. One class, one TV channel may be a great idea, but isn't it also very distant from the realities of India, where because of digital divide, many have dropped out of schools? The fact is that there are several, children who do not have internet, they do not have devices.
You gave my friend Shashi a long run, so please allow me to answer his questions and yours. Shashi Tharoor, the wordsmith, has had to rely only on pointing backwards at the last 2 years of pandemic to make all those allegations that he just did. The pandemic hit every country in the world. And when he talks about 46 million people having been pushed into poverty, he doesn't talk about the 800 million people that were assisted with direct cash assistance, DBT, and with food grains that is continuing till now. The reality is India has been hit by the pandemic, but has come out of it better than most countries. Again, let me repeat, fastest growing large economy. Now, Shashi talked about MSMEs, totally ignoring the lakhs of crores of assistance that the MSMEs have already got during the 2 years of pandemic. And he clearly wasn't listening today when the finance minister said that there will be another 50,000 crores of grants and assistance to MSMEs and another 2 lakh crores of credit to be made available to MSMEs. So, to just blithely ignore that and make these allegations is just, I can understand Shashi's compulsions, but it's just not factual. Now, you talked about ideas. Now, the reality is that under the governments which ran India for decades, of which Shashi's party was in charge, ideas had given way to only just talking about poverty eradication and doing nothing about it. The reality is, under the Modi government, there has been a dramatic transformation. Ideas have been fresh, have been out of the box, and they have been implemented. Shashi talks about underperformance in infrastructure. That is just bizarre. I mean, you look at the road lengths that have been built in the last 7 years. Yes, during the pandemic, everything got affected. So let's not compare everything to the 2 years of pandemic. 25,000 kilometers of highways are going to be built now. And 15,000 crores are going to be given to the Northeast. Have you ever heard of 15,000 crores for the Northeast? And when you say that will it actually happen, look at what has happened. 2 states in the Northeast have got railway connection for the first time under the Modi government. And the Northeast has seen more investment in the last 7 years than it has seen in decades before. So why would you then not say that having shown the track record that we can do it, that we will just now announce and not do it? And if you talk about 200 channels and the digital divide, this is precisely how you address the digital divide, don't you? Because we have a problem with education in many states and how they run it. But if you directly access this, we have shown, the Modi government has shown that through direct benefit transfer, you completely transform governance. Instead of the 15 paisa out of every rupee that was reaching the citizen during, as said by a former prime minister in the 1980s, now the entire rupee reaches them. Therefore, when you have 200 channels with dedicated subjects reaching students, the dearth of teachers' attendance, the dearth of the shortcomings in the schools is bypassed. And this doesn't talk about the optical fiber in every village. Now, I remember for the 10 years of the UPA government, I used to keep bringing it up every year that the government was sitting on tens of thousands of crores of the Universal Service Obligation Fund, USO fund, and not spending it on building fiber optics into rural India. That is changing dramatically. Every village is now going to be completed by 2025. Okay. And this year, there is a massive thrust. So, look at the Har Ghar Jal project. Now, for decades, Shashi's party and their governments did nothing about it. And today, millions and millions of houses have got water. And when we say we are going to add 38 more million houses with piped water to their homes, then you ask about, well, will you really do
Dr.
it?
Tharoor, without going through the fine prints, did the opposition speak too soon?
Not at all. In fact, we've done our homework and looked at the numbers. I must say that Jay accuses me of looking backwards because I complain about numbers from last year. In fact, the most recent numbers available for capital expenditure are the last 3 quarters of last year. And he complains about that. And then he talks about my party being in government, which is the last time they were elected was in 2009. I think there's a slight irony there. I'll give you a couple of examples. Jay talked about agriculture. But if you look, for example, at the PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, which is supposed to fast-track payments to farmers, a response given to Parliament by the Agriculture Minister confesses that they have made such a botch-up of the scheme that 3,000 crores have been paid to the wrong beneficiaries. 42 lakh people who were ineligible have been given this money, and they're trying to reclaim it now. Now, that's an example of how effectively agriculture has been helped. Okay, Manrega, which for the last 2 years there's been an increased demand for jobs. Last year, even though in the budget speech I made in Parliament, I predicted that the amount they requested was not going to be enough, and I turned out to be right. They came back with supplementary demands to ask for another 20-odd thousand crores, and finally they ended up finishing the year having spent all of that and still having 20,000 crores pending They've again gone back to a lower amount this year. I mean, it's as if they never learn from their. I mean, Jay wants me to look at their track record. It's their track record I'm talking about. He accuses me of not being factual, but every single fact I've stated on the record, he's welcome to listen to this tape again and check every fact. Every fact I've given you is absolutely accurate. Now, the situation I'm looking at today is that while Jay is talking about the big picture, the big ticket numbers, and so on and so forth, I'm concerned about real human beings. And if you look at the MSMEs and talk about 50,000 crores, it's actually a guarantee cover. It's not money going in. It's the ECGLS scheme that's gone up by 50,000 crores. That's basically a new loan offering. But many of these MSCs have closed down. And a small little chap with a lathe and the 3 employees, he shut down after demonetization. He can't revive. You need to do a whole lot to soak these people back into an economy that has essentially expelled them thanks to the BJP's tender mercies. So you've got some real challenges. And on top of that, there are many, many sector-specific reforms expected that were not even mentioned. What is the government going to do about tourism, hospitality, entertainment? We know nothing. All we know is that in the pandemic, restaurants, malls, theatres have been either closed or had to go through restrictions on seating capacity. Government has done nothing for them. There is no special package to revive them. This is a great opportunity in the budget today to say we understand the importance of tourism and hospitality. We'll give them a boost. Tourism employs 8 times more people for the same amount of investment than industry
let me
does.
give the final comments
But
to both
we're not
of you.
doing any